How much do you bench? It's a question at the tip of every single gym bro's tongue. But unless 315 is more of a warm-up for you, you're probably wondering how to get that bench up. And as the back to back to back to back to back number one raw with reps full power bencher in the world, I'll be your daddy today, and I'll teach you how to stop being a disappointment. Bench press is a full body movement. It uses everything from your legs to your neck. So you're going to have to go on a deep journey to discover what your weak points are, because that is probably the part that is holding your bench back. Amazingly, there are 4 categories of muscle groups that allow you to get a bigger bench press because they're used in different phases of the bench press. The first group I'm going to call the stabilizers. These are the muscles that are going to allow you to control the bar and have the bar not throw you around like a redheaded stepchild. This is going to be your back and your forearms. The strength that you build in your back, specifically your lats and traps, is going to be what builds that strong, sturdy base at the bottom of your bench press. It's going to allow you to kind of create a platform and control the bar down as it descends towards your chest. Forearms have a kind of a different role when it comes to stabilizing the bench press. And this all goes back to physics. Newton, the virgin incarnate, had a law that says for every action, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction. Your forearms are going to be that reactive tension, the reactive muscle group, that's going to help keep the bar in the correct pathway as it descends towards your chest. If there's a little bit of momentum towards your feet, your forearms are going to correct that. If there's momentum towards your face, your forearms are going to correct that. As long as you have the muscle memory for a correct bar line for the descent and ascent of the bench press, because the forearms are used to stabilize the bar in both aspects of the bench press, you're going to be stronger and you're going to be more consistent with your bench press. So forearms are often neglected. They also have a secondary function. You see, when you get big, let me get my cardio arm going, since I was single for way too long. You develop bicep musculature. And as you come down on the bench press, you notice that your forearms and your bicep come in contact. The bigger your biceps are and the bigger your forearms are, the more you're going to be able to leverage that contact between your bicep and forearm as almost like a launch point, where you're going to be able to launch off your chest because you're able to press against your forearm and bicep and kind of give yourself a little extra edge. The next 2 categories are the movers. There's 2 different phases of the bench press that you have to consider these musculature to bench bigger. So you've got the biceps and the pecs. The biceps and the pecs are going to help you pop off of your chest. That first inch or 2, which has a lot of personality, is going to be predominantly chest and biceps, because it's going to pop off the chest because you're going to initiate it by flexing your pecs, and it brings the bar up. It also has the biceps going on in there. And then you've got lockout strength, which is going to be shoulders and triceps. And that just pulling through and pushing through the bench press is going to be predominantly the shoulders and triceps. So let's break it down again. We've got the descent, which is a lot of forearms and back stabilizing the bar all the way down. You also have those other muscle groups. All of the categories are activating at this point. You've got the biceps and triceps and pecs and shoulders helping you not dive bomb the bar to your chest. And then when you press up, you've got the pec and bicep popping it off. And then you've got the follow through with the tricep and shoulder. Now that we understand the muscle groups that are important for performing the bench press, let's go through some accessories, my personal favorite accessories to increase the bench press. The back is one of the most complex musculatures of the human body, the latissimus dorsi, the trapezius. And it's because there's multiple ranges of motion and multiple different ways to train the back. Now, we're going to be talking about the 3 different planes of motion that you can train your back. And we're going to be focusing on the latissimus dorsi. Or if you're a nerd, it's just the back, the wings, the shit that makes the girls horny, right? So there's 3 planes of motion. There's coming up from overhead, there's coming straight into the chest, and then there's coming up from the floor. My personal favorite way to train the back from the overhead plane of motion is with wide grip lat pull downs. So I take a grip as wide as possible and I make sure not to wrap my thumbs around the bar, because when you wrap your thumbs around the lat pull down, you develop a different kind of musculature going on and it's more bicep. So what you want, and you'll notice I'm not actually sitting on the pad. What you want is a maximal range of motion. When I'm sitting on the lat pull down machine, I don't get this stretch at the top. This stretch at the top is very important because it's maintenance for your muscles. Because accessory work is just stretching under a load. So we get this full stretch, and notice I've got my thumbs not wrapped around the bar, if you can see it. And if you want to kind of lean into developing your back a little bit better, you'll also take your index fingers off the bar and you'll finger gun it. And that'll get a little bit more tension through your crushers of your hand, and you're going to get more back out of this. And you're going to develop your grip a little bit better too. So we get a good big stretch and we roll our shoulders in and pinch our scapula. And then we hold this for a moment and then we slowly let the eccentric go back into that stretching position. So we explode down, hold it, and let it go slowly. Now, this method emphasizes the eccentric of the movement. So we've got this hold here to kind of accentuate the contraction so that we build a better mind-muscle connection. And then we let the eccentric kind of slowly go, because it's going to develop kind of iso holds in every single range of motion. And then we get a good stretch. And the stretch is going to help develop those micro tears in your muscles that your body has to repair. And whenever it repairs something, it's going to come back stronger. So this kind of tempo is going to develop better back gains for you. And you're going to get a bigger back, a bigger bench, more stable bench. You're going to get stronger. Now, the second plane of motion that we're going to be talking about with the lats is going straight into the chest. This is a different range of motion than coming down, obviously. So kind of the same tempo. You want a big stretch. You're going to be able to feel the stretch in the middle of your back, and it's going to be nice and therapeutic, not only developing those micro tears, but it's also going to increase the elasticity of your musculature. So big stretch, contract in, and you'll feel a pump a little bit differently than with the lat pull down. So this is a cable row. This is my favorite accessory movement in performing this plane of motion for developing the lats. Now, this range of motion is my personal strongest range of motion. It also is very similar to the range of motion and the kind of bar pathway that is useful for performing the bench press. If you think about it, when you're bringing the bar down, you're basically rowing the bar into the correct bar path. And this is going to simulate that because it's the same plane of motion as the bench press. So we make sure we have this hold and the slow eccentric, because 55% of the hypertrophic muscle gains that you're going to get from doing accessory movements is going to come from a controlled eccentric. And as well, we have our thumbs not connected, and we can finger gun it too to get a little bit more isolation towards the back and get a little bit better gains. Now, there's a caveat to all these grip things that I'm talking about when it comes to back stuff, because if your grip is your limiting factor on developing your back gains, which as a beginner, you won't have as much trouble developing back gains if you are not mitigating the issues developed with kind of relying on your grip. You can add straps or hooks so that you can go heavier on this back stuff. As long as you stay controlled, you maintain that tempo, you're going to develop a lot more back gains, and you're not going to limit your back gains by the strength of your forearms and your grip. The last plane of motion we're going to talk about while developing the back for the bench press is this from the ground up. This is a plane of motion that will probably more help develop your deadlift than it will your bench press, but a big back means a big bench. So there's no negative side effects to training your back in all three planes of motion. So this is a T-bar row. It's basically a machine. You can also set it up with a landmine, with a barbell connected to the floor, basically. And basically what you do is you can either take a neutral grip, which is the grip right here, or you can try and get as wide a grip as possible, which is my personal favorite. The wider the grip, the more isolation you get on your lats, the bigger wings you grow, the more girls you get in your DMs. That's a lie. I don't have any girls in my DMs. So you try to make sure you're not just deadlifting and then pulling up. I gotta adjust a little bit because my legs are a little bigger than average. You wanna make sure that you're not just deadlifting it, because you're not gonna develop your back at all if you're just deadlifting the T-bar row. You wanna take almost like a football position, a hockey position, an athletic position. We've got a slight bend in your knees, toes pointed out a little bit so that you have a strong base. And you wanna get that deep stretch at the bottom. You wanna round your shoulders forward, and you wanna pinch your scaps up. You wanna feel that squeeze in your lats while you're performing this. So you want a squeeze and release and stretch. Squeeze and stretch. If any of you are fans of Kai Green, the ex-professional bodybuilder who went head-to-head with Phil Heath a bunch of times and probably should have won an Olympia, but something to do with fucking a grapefruit, you'll recognize the squeeze and stretch cue, because that is a cue directly derived from bodybuilding. It is a cue that will develop bigger back. Bigger back means bigger bench. A bigger musculature means that you can build a stronger neural connection with those muscles, and you'll be able to develop your back a little bit better. Now we're on to forearms, and forearms are kind of a nuanced muscle group because there's a lot of things going on. You've got 5 fingers, hopefully, and those different fingers have different things. You've got the thumb, which has its own individual strengths, weaknesses, and its own function on its own being your thumb. You've got your manipulators, which is your index finger and your middle finger, which are good for nuanced tasks like writing and kind of fine detail work. These are the most utilized muscle groups, the most utilized fingers, because of the world that we live in. They get used the most. They end up being stronger than the fingers and the forearm muscles that need to be stronger for gripping things and having a strong forearm. And that would be your crushers, which is your pinky and your ring finger. The crushers, for our nuanced approach to forearms, back in the Neanderthal days, we had a lot of gripping. We evolved so that we have strong hands that need to grip things strong, and that is with these fingers. They are the crushers, and that is their function, to grip things, to crush things, to not be able to let go of things so that we can pull things and be strong. Nuanced, fine detail, big crush. That's all you need to know. But also, in addition to moving your fingers, your wrists also have this kind of plane of motion and this roll capability to operate on your forearm. And that's going to use all of the muscles used to move these fingers to move them all around. So my favorite and the accessory movement that I've done the longest and most for developing forearm strength is a giant set. And what we're doing is we're going to be doing underhanded wrist curls. We're going to flip them over and do overhanded wrist curls. And that also develops the gripping strength, because you've got to stay in contact with the dumbbells in order to grip it. So it's kind of hitting, it's kind of feeding 2 birds with 1 stone there. And then we flip it back over and we kind of burn it out. So what we do is we can do both wrists and hands at the same time. And we let the dumbbell roll to our fingertips, and then we grip it back up and curl our wrists forward. I personally like to do 15 like this, flip them over, let it go slack, and then curl it up, do 15 like that, and then back over, 15 like that. I personally do 3 sets of that, and on the 3rd set, the last part of the giant set, where we're doing the underhanded wrist curls after we've already flipped it back, I do a burnout set to kind of just fire up the entire forearms, get the nice veinage, the nice musculature and nice pump, and make sure I can't do my alone time when I'm at home. That accessory movement works on the musculature for rolling your wrists and a bit of the grippiness, but our next accessory movement is going to really run into fatiguing and burning out and really testing our strength with the crushers. Now, this accessory movement is called the monkey grip deadlift hold. Deadlift holds are really good at developing your grip strength for performing the deadlift, but a lot of times, a lot of people kind of neglect the crushers and they kind of rely a bit too much on tips and tricks and party tricks in order to get their grip strength to a level where they can just lock out a deadlift and then their bench still sucks. So monkey grip deadlift is going to require a little bit of chalk unless you also want to test your testicular fortitude. But basically, you grab the bar and you don't wrap your thumb around the bar and you hold it for time. Now I got 2 red plates on here. This is 245, I believe. Kilograms never made it to the moon, so I don't really care about the kilo math. But 2 reds, and basically you do just a regular deadlift, but you hold it at the top for time. So my last training day, I did 2 45-pound plates, 225 for 30 seconds in between each movement. And this really burnt out my crushers, and it really gave me a really intense forearm pump that I haven't been able to replicate or haven't experienced previously in a very, very long time. So it's going to develop those crushers, which is going to allow you to stabilize the bench press a little bit better. All you do, you get your regular grip, don't wrap your thumb around the bar, and you deadlift. I only popped the bar up a little bit so I didn't crush my dick. And then you hold it for time. Now, I'm not training grip today. I'm just doing this video for y'all. And so I'm not gonna hold this for a long time, but that's basically how you train your crushers on your hands in order to develop your grip a little bit stronger. Now, we've got those 2 different categories, the pecs and biceps, and then the triceps and shoulders. And there's more ways to train biceps and triceps than there is to skin a cat. So I'm going to show you guys my favorite way to feed 2 birds with 1 stone, because it's my favorite accessory movement for training both biceps and triceps. Because when you do a superset, you want to superset a push with a pull. You want contradictory movements to kind of lean on each other, and so that they're not taking away from each other. And it's also developing that kind of relationship in between your muscles. This is a superset where you do tricep push downs, and you can use any of the cable attachments you want. I just chose to use the straight cable attachment, and you can perform any kind of tricep push down that you want. You can do reverse curls, you can do the braided cable rope attachment push downs, you can do single arm tricep push downs. The point is to activate the tricep, maintain this beautiful tempo, the 0132 tempo that I call it, because the 0 means you're explosive down, the 1 means you hold that contraction for a moment. You do a 3 count eccentric, and then you hold that stretch for about 2 counts. And then what you want to do is you want to go from that into a bicep movement. You can do hammer curls. I personally prefer doing the palms up curl, where you start from a neutral grip at your sides and you curl it back up, and you do that 0132 tempo as well for the bicep curl. This is going to get that push. It's going to get that pull. It's going to get that complementary muscle interaction between your triceps and biceps. And also a side benefit, it feels like you're getting a hug just around your arms. And it's nice because you don't always get hugs when you look like me. The last muscle group that we're going to address today is the shoulders, the deltoids. And there's a couple different muscles in the deltoids, and we're going to hit a couple different muscles in the deltoids, different categories or different subgroups of muscles in the deltoids. Doesn't really matter what they're called right now. It's just we're going to be hitting them. So we're also going to do a superset, because supersets are really good at developing a hypoxic situation for your muscles. What hypoxia is a lack of oxygen in the muscles. And when you take away all the oxygen from your muscles, because every time that you use muscles, you use both calcium and magnesium and oxygen. And you want to reduce the amount of all of those in your muscles to get an increased blood flow, because the way that your body delivers nutrients like calcium, magnesium, and oxygen is through blood flow. So the bigger the pump that you can get is determined by how hypoxic you get your muscles. So if you're able to increase the amount of hypoxia that you're experiencing in your muscles, the better gains you're going to develop, the more gains you're going to develop, and the bigger your shoulders are going to get, the better pump, and it's going to feel real nice. So we're going to do a superset. We're going to do side raises and front raises. Simple enough. But the entire time, we're going to be holding the same dumbbells. We're also going to be working the grip a little bit. And by not putting down the dumbbells the entire time that you're doing this, you're developing the grip, you're developing the deltoids, and both of those planes of motion, the side raises and front raises, two different planes of motion, and you're going to be developing much better gains. So with this accessory movement, the superset of the dumbbell side raises and dumbbell front raises, there's a little bit of nuance going on. So with the side raises, we're trying to focus on that 0132 tempo. And it's kind of hard to get a little bit of a stretch at the bottom, so it's not super important, but you can kind of let your shoulders sag at the bottom to try and emphasize getting a stretch in your deltoids. It's hard, and it's very light stretch, and you're going to get more of a stretch with the front raises. Now, the front raises, there's a little bit more nuance going on, because when you come up and you have your dumbbells parallel with the floor, you also want the angle of your hands to not be dipping in either direction. You want them to be parallel, if not over supinated or pronated, to the point where it kind of looks like you're trying to pour some water into a glass with both hands, almost like you're double fisting some 40s and you're trying to get your boy lit. So trying to keep that is going to get and target the deltoid a little bit more effectively. And at the bottom, you want to kind of roll your shoulders forward and sag a little more, and that's going to emphasize the stretch in this movement. So you've got that contraction at the top where you're kind of pouring out glasses, and that stretch at the bottom with that controlled eccentric. I know I said that the last muscle group that we're going to be talking about today is the shoulders, and that is kind of true, because that's the last muscle group we're going to be aiming to develop muscularly in this video. Now, the pectoral muscles, the titties, the chest, these are kind of the most sensitive and most volatile muscle group in the bench press, because the majority of injuries that happen in the bench press happen in some sort of catastrophic fashion when it comes to the pectoral muscles. And that often is pretty grotesque and very painful. And it's because the pecs get a very good development through all of the other accessories that we do throughout the training. You don't necessarily have to target the pecs directly, but you do have to do a bit of prehab, rehab, and muscle maintenance when it comes to the pectorals. And here's my favorite thing that I do before every bench day. And it doesn't really have a name, but what I do is I do really lightweight. These are 10-pound dumbbells. They might be a little heavy personally for me. And I do a iso hold with a maximum stretch, letting the stretch in the pec be as maximal as possible in a dumbbell fly position. And I hold that for 60 seconds. I do an internal count, so it's not exactly perfect or accurate. And then I get the blood flowing to the system by doing a set of 12 immediately after that iso hold. You get that good stretch with that iso hold, and then you get the blood flowing to the pecs, and they're pretty primed and warmed up and are less likely to have a catastrophic failure when performing the bench press. And then afterwards, it doesn't really have a name either. It's almost like I feel like there's some yoga movement, like a rising sunshine or whatever. So basically what you do is you hold the dumbbells, you put them together and you raise them above your head, and you kind of do circles really slow, making sure that you have a good stretch in almost every isometric hold position that you can have in your chest. So you start from overhead, and then you slowly, with the maximum amount of distance between the dumbbells and your body that you can realistically hold. You're not trying to overstretch. You're not trying to tear things. You're trying to get a nice light stretch throughout your upper body. And you bring it from overhead to your hips, and you return. And you do about 3 to 5 reps of this really slow stretch movement. And this is going to not only stretch your pecs, because you've got that isometric hold in the middle there, but it's also going to stretch your triceps with that overhead part. It's going to stretch your biceps at the bottom part, and it'll get a little bit of a shoulder stretch and lat stretch going on intermittently between those different spots. So it's a really good idea to develop the elasticity in your chest to prevent catastrophic failure while performing the bench press. Congratulations, you've gone through my favorite way to develop the bench press as a 600-pound bencher. Now, this isn't going to immediately develop your bench into some 500-pound bencher or 400-pound bencher. It's going to take time. Your muscles take time to develop, And as long as you stay consistent with these methodologies and make sure that you have that 0132 tempo in all your accessories, that's really the lesson that we're learning here, is that the 013 tempo is the best thing that you can do to your accessories, because it's not only going to have some sort of prehab effect while it's working on the elasticity of your muscles, it's also going to develop that mind muscle connection and also increase the hypoxic response to your muscles, because you're also having an increased time under tension, depleting your oxygen levels. You're going to get a bigger pump. You're going to get better gains. So I hope that you take the lessons that I've taught you in this video to heart and you implement them into your own training so that you can develop a larger bench press. So I got a question for you guys. How many of you guys bench 225, 315, 405? What do you consider a big bench press? I personally have outdated and grotesque views on the bench press and squat, because I believe that I personally am average, which is not fair. So thank you for sticking around. Like, comment, subscribe. And if you have a homie who's struggling with their bench press and they can't quite figure out why, send them this video to kind of push them a little further and help educate them and become a student of the body. Because understanding why things work and why we're doing things allows you to buy into things a little bit better, and they end up working a lot better because you know that you're not doing busy work. You actually have a purpose, and there's a mission with every single movement. So hope you guys have a good day, and hope you guys put some big PRs on your bench press. Have a good one. Patty out.